In 1997, a sound was recorded in the Pacific Ocean. It lasted just over a minute. It was picked up by hydrophones more than 3,000 miles apart, simultaneously. The sound was louder than any biological creature ever recorded in human history. Louder than a blue whale. Louder than anything that had ever been cataloged by science. It came from somewhere in the deep water off the coast of South America. It rose in frequency. It was almost organic. NOAA scientists who analyzed the recording had no explanation. They named it the Bloop. And then they quietly admitted something that most people never heard. The ocean, 71% of this planet's surface, is for the most part completely unknown to us. We have better maps of the surface of Mars than we do of our own ocean floor. We have sent humans to the moon more times than we have sent humans to the deepest point of our own ocean. And somewhere beneath the surface, past every layer that light can reach, past every depth that any submarine has ever descended to, there is a layer of the ocean that science has never physically accessed. What sonar has found there will stay with you. To understand what we're talking about, you need to understand what the ocean actually is, not the surface, not the coastlines, not the coral reefs you've seen in nature documentaries. The ocean is a structure, a layered, pressurized, largely lightless column of water that stretches, in places, nearly 7 miles straight down. The sunlight zone, the top 200 meters, is the only part of the ocean most people will ever experience. It's where the coral is, where the fish swim, where the light reaches. Below that is the twilight zone, a band of water from 200 to 1,000 meters. Some light filters down here, not enough to see by, but enough to cast shadows. Strange creatures live at this depth. Things with bioluminescent bodies and enormous eyes, designed to capture the last traces of light. Below the twilight zone is the midnight zone, 1,000 to 4,000 meters. No light, permanent darkness. The pressure is crushing. Temperatures hover just above freezing. Life here should be impossible, and yet it exists, adapted to conditions that would kill almost anything on the surface. Below that is the abyssal zone, 4,000 to 6,000 meters. It covers more of Earth's surface than all the continents combined. Almost nothing has been placed here by human hands. We have explored less than 1% of it, and below even the abyss, in the deepest trenches carved into the ocean floor, is the Hadal Zone, named after Hades, the underworld. This is where it gets strange. The layer that fooled the entire United States Navy. During World War II, the U.S. Navy deployed sonar systems across vast stretches of the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans. Sonar works by sending a pulse of sound into the water and measuring how long it takes to bounce back. That return signal tells you how far away something is. Submarine operators used it to navigate, to find enemy vessels, to measure the depth of the seafloor. And almost immediately, something went wrong. Sonar operators were detecting a false floor. A second bottom, somewhere between 200 and 800 meters down, that wasn't on any chart. It was too shallow to be the actual seafloor. It appeared solid on the readouts. And it was enormous. It stretched across entire ocean basins. Navy engineers assumed it was equipment malfunction. Then they assumed it was some geological feature they hadn't mapped. Neither explanation fit. And then they noticed something that changed everything. The false floor moved. During the day, it sat at depth. At night, every night, without exception, it rose toward the surface. At dawn, it descended again. It wasn't a geological feature. It was alive. What sonar had detected and initially mistaken for the seafloor across thousands of miles of ocean was the largest migration of living creatures on Earth every single day, back and forth, up and down. The creatures responsible are mostly small, lanternfish, krill, shrimp, squid, and 1,000 other species that live in the twilight zone during the day and rise to feed near the surface at night. But the sheer quantity of them, the density of their bodies packed into a single layer, is enough to return a sonar signal that looks like solid ground. This layer has a name, the deep scattering layer, and it had been there the entire time, crossing every ocean, every day, undetected by human beings until a piece of military equipment accidentally found it in the 1940s. We had been living above the largest animal migration in the history of our planet and had no idea. The Hadal Zone. What is actually down there? The Mariana Trench is the deepest known point on Earth, located in the western Pacific Ocean, east of the Mariana Islands. It reaches a maximum depth at a location called Challenger Deep, approximately 36,000 feet, nearly 7 miles below the surface of the ocean. To give you a sense of scale, if you placed Mount Everest at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, its peak would still be more than a mile underwater. The pressure at Challenger Deep is approximately 1,086 times the atmospheric pressure at sea level. That is the equivalent of having 50 jumbo jets stacked on top of you. The temperature hovers between 1 and 4 degrees Celsius, and it is completely, permanently, absolutely dark. The first, and for decades only, human beings to reach Challenger Deep were Jacques Piccard and Don Walsh, who descended in a submersible called the Trieste in January 1960. They reached the bottom after nearly 5 hours of descent. They were there for 20 minutes. They looked out the porthole, and there, at the deepest point on Earth, under conditions that should make complex life impossible, they saw a flatfish just sitting there, living. Since then, expeditions to the Hadal Zone have discovered something that has quietly unsettled deep-sea biologists for decades. The deeper you go, the more plastic you find. Microplastics have been recovered from sediment samples at full ocean depth, 11 kilometers down. Creatures pulled from the Hadal Zone have been found with plastic fibers in their digestive systems. The deepest, most isolated, most inaccessible place on the planet. And we got there first. The Bloop. What it was and what it wasn't. Back to 1997, back to the sound. NOAA's Equatorial Pacific Ocean Climate Studies Program, a network of autonomous underwater hydrophones originally built during the Cold War to monitor Soviet submarine activity, recorded the Bloop on August 19th. The recording is publicly available. You can listen to it. Sped up 16 times from its original frequency, it sounds almost like a distant, low moan. Something organic. Something enormous. At its actual recorded intensity, it would have dwarfed the loudest blue whale call ever measured. For years, the Bloop remained unexplained. Scientists debated its origin. Some pointed to tectonic activity. Some, less officially, speculated about undiscovered deep-sea megafauna, creatures so large and so deep they had never been observed. In 2012, NOAA released a formal analysis. The Bloop, they concluded, was the sound of ice, specifically a phenomenon called ice quake, the fracturing and movement of large ice masses off the Antarctic coast. The signature matched. The location matched. The physics matched. Case closed. Except, in the same report, NOAA noted that their hydrophone network continued to capture sounds from the deep ocean that remain unclassified. Sounds that don't match any known geological event, any known biological species, any known man-made source. They have names: Julia, Train, Slowdown, Upsweep. Some have been partially explained, some have not. The ocean at depth is not silent, it is full of sound, and we have cataloged perhaps a fraction of what is producing it. Here is the part of this story that most people don't know, and that changes the context of everything above it. In 1977, a research submersible called Alvin was exploring the seafloor near the Galapagos Islands at a depth of around 2,400 meters. The scientists aboard were looking for heat anomalies on the ocean floor, geological features they expected to find. What they found instead had never been theorized: hydrothermal vents, cracks in the ocean floor where superheated water, sometimes exceeding 400 degrees Celsius, pours out from beneath the Earth's crust. The water is loaded with minerals, hydrogen sulfide, and chemicals that on the surface would be considered toxic. And around these vents was an entire ecosystem. Not a few organisms. An ecosystem: tube worms 6 feet long, blind shrimp, giant clams, crabs, bacteria that formed thick mats across the seafloor. None of these creatures had ever been seen before. None had been predicted. None were using sunlight as a food source. They were running on chemosynthesis, converting the chemical energy of the vent fluids directly into biological material. This was a discovery so significant that it changed the definition of where life can exist. Before 1977, the scientific consensus was essentially life requires sunlight, either directly or through the food chain. After 1977, that was no longer true. And the implication, the one that still drives research to this day, is this: if life can exist without sunlight in extreme pressure, extreme heat, and toxic chemistry at the bottom of our ocean, it can exist almost anywhere in the universe. The icy moons of Jupiter and Saturn, Europa and Enceladus, are now considered among the most promising candidates for extraterrestrial life, not because of anything we found in space, because of what we found at the bottom of the ocean in 1977. Here is what we actually know, stripped of everything else. We have explored approximately 25% of the ocean floor in meaningful detail. The rest is educated inference, sonar shadow, and assumption. The Hadal Zone, the deepest trenches, the places that cover roughly 1.5% of the ocean floor, has been visited in total fewer times than the surface of the moon. Every single expedition to the deep ocean returns with new species, not occasionally. Every time, without exception. Scientists estimate that somewhere between 700,000 and 1 million species live in the deep ocean that we have not yet identified. To put that number in perspective, we have cataloged approximately 8.7 million species across the entire planet. The deep ocean alone may be hiding 10% of that again. Creatures that have never been seen, never been named, never been imagined. And size is not the limiting factor. In 2023, researchers examining sediment cores from the eastern Pacific Ocean found evidence of organic activity at depths where no life should be able to sustain itself. The signal was faint. The mechanism is unknown. Something was there, something was metabolizing, something was alive. We don't know what. The ocean is not empty, it is not silent, it is not mapped. It is simply dark. And darkness, as it turns out, is not the obstacle to life we always assumed it was. Whether there are creatures in the Hadal zone that have never encountered anything from the surface, creatures shaped by millions of years of evolution in complete isolation, total darkness, crushing pressure, is not science fiction. It is a genuine open question. It may be the most significant open question on this planet, and the answer, if it exists, is 7 miles below your feet. Here's what I keep thinking about. The deep scattering layer, this enormous curtain of life, billions of creatures rising and falling every single day, every ocean, every latitude, had been there for longer than human civilization has existed. The first fish may have evolved before anything walked on land. And we didn't know this layer was there until a piece of wartime equipment inadvertently detected it in the 1940s. We were living above it. Every human being who ever stood on a ship, every ancient sailor who crossed the Pacific, every fisherman who pulled a net up from the dark water, all of them, every day, directly above this migration. And none of them knew. That's the thing about the ocean. It doesn't hide. We just haven't looked. 71% of this planet, miles deep, full of sound, full of life, full of chemistry we don't understand yet. And somewhere at the bottom, maybe in the Mariana Trench, maybe in some unnamed hadal cut in the South Pacific, something is living in conditions that the rest of the universe might recognize as home. We are not done discovering this planet. We have barely begun. If you've ever questioned reality, you're in the right place. This is Midnight Fact Society. We'll see you in the dark.